Our next speaker for the grade class of '63, Steve Grant, was my freshman year roommate. And Amherst couldn't have had a better introduction for me because Steve was such a wonderful, nice, very cultured, educated family. His father, in fact, was an Amherst alumnus and the president of Houghton Mifflin. And they were also very gracious in their hospitality. I have to reminisce about this country bumpkin coming from St. Louis and being, in those days, of course, you couldn't go home Thanksgiving vacation, so the Grants kindly invited us down to their wonderful Wellesley home where I had an extremely pleasant weekend. Steve's and my interests diverged. He became a linguist. I got more interested in a young woman at Smith. And after a PhD in education, doctorate in education after Amherst, Steve went on to a very long career in the State Department, mostly with AID, postings around the world. But along the way, he got this interest, avocation in postcards. And he's collected and then published 3 gorgeous volumes, one from the postcards of El Salvador, one from Indonesia, and one from Guinea. And he's going to talk to you today about some of the old Amherst postcards. Obviously much more interested in the larger meaning of these postcards than the postcards themselves. But you should also, Steve has also in his retirement published one book, a biography of Peter Strickland, New London shipmaster, Boston merchant, and first consul to Senegal. But stay tuned because Steve's current project is of particular significance, not only to us, but to the literary world. Apparently there's never been a biography of Henry Clay Folger and his wife, Emily, who of course gave this unparalleled collection of Elizabethan materials and a building and endowment to become the Folger Shakespeare Library. And Steve has been authorized to write a biography. Unfortunately, he's not going to talk to us about that today.
Not yet.
But stay tuned, come back to the 50th, and watch for the book. In the meantime, please welcome Steve about old Amherst College.
Thank you, Kent, very much. You can divide mankind into the haves and the have-nots. And the haves you can further divide into collectors and non-collectors. I wish I could say that the old Amherst postcards that we will examine together were collected by my grandfather, John Grant, of the class of 1892, but I can't. He was born 1 year after the first picture postcard was produced in Austria in 1869. Third generation at Amherst, I had to go out to the marketplace to locate these cards, purchasing them at postcard sales on the East Coast since 1980. Recently, I have acquired a few on eBay. 1900 to 1930 is considered the golden age of picture postcards, the period preferred by deltiologists, those people who collect and study postcards. With a postcard, you get a lot more than a pretty picture. With luck, you get a stamp, a postmark, and a message. Together, these elements can constitute a slice of history. To ferret it out, it helps to be a sleuth. Here we see familiar Amherst College buildings photographed around 1900. You have the College Library, or Morgan Library, built in 1853. Johnson Chapel, or College Tower, built in 1827. The Octagon, designed by the same architect as the Morgan Library, built in 1848 and initially used for astronomy and geology departments. And the College Church, built in 1873, which ceased functioning as a church in 1932. And since 1948, only the steeple remains. You've noticed that 2 cards are black and white and 2 in color. Many years before color film was invented, postcard producers would have black and white pictures colored or tinted by hand and then reproduced. Often a group of ladies sitting around a table, each one holding a pencil of a different color, would shade in their pre-designated section and pass the picture on to the next artist. Different printings would result in different hues. Here are 3 hand-colored versions of the same black and white photograph. Observe the Williston Tower roof that changes from red to beige to gray. Or see how the same bush dons different shades of color. Turning the cards over from the picture of the recto side to the verso side, we notice several more things. Each card was sent through the mail. Most of old postcards that one can find today have no stamp, no postmark, no message. They were purchased as souvenirs of a trip before the box camera appeared. The cards might have been kept in shoe boxes or nicely preserved in photo albums. However, only a small fraction of the postcards produced a century ago have survived. Most have been thrown out, and with them a small part of history. All 4 cards were sent from Amherst to the same person, Jesse Cragen, in the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn. And even more curiously, 3 of them were sent on the same day, February 4th, 1904. The green postage stamp of Benjamin Franklin, Series 1902, confirms that this was indeed the penny postcard era. The address takes up the whole side of the card, unlike the custom today. We return to the recto side to view the brief messages that we skipped over. Postcard formats were regulated by the Universal Postal Union. Until roughly 1907, you were allowed little space for writing. It was thought that the entire verso side was necessary for the address. In 1907 was born the divided back postcard that we know today. Right half for the address, the left half for the message, and a vertical line in the middle. On the surface, these messages sound banal. Hope you are well. Glad to hear from you. Shall write soon. But the line, where's the letter you owe me, introduces an insistence that might well be part of a romantic correspondence. And who would write Jesse thrice in one day? We have only initials for a signature, FBA. Would you bet that this is an Amherst student writing to Jesse? If he's a senior, he would be in the class of 1904. But why not a freshman in the class of 1907, or somewhere in between? By checking in a college biographical record, we learned in the class of 04, there was a senior with a first initial F and a last initial A. This was Francis Adams. We could be onto something, but a better bet is the freshman class of 1907, Felix Ballard Atwood. He alone possesses the 3 initials we're looking for, FBA. But can we be sure? If only we could find an additional clue. The 4th card, sent from Amherst to Flatbush in April 1906, 2 years later, reveals FBA's fraternity, Phi Kappa Psi. Before we leave these 4 cards, let's look for signs indicating a production date. Near the title of the card, there's a number. We see the 3 numbers follow the series from 6,000 to 7,000. And they show a range, here's where the numbers are, they show a range of about 90. So most likely over 100 color picture postcards of the Amherst College campus were produced then by one company. That's a lot of cards. On the earliest card, there's further information, the copyright date, 1902. The card sent in 1906, made by Scott Photo for Edgar T. Scott, written on the recto side, and Germany written on the verso side. A century ago, the Germans possessed the most sophisticated printing presses, and European